There is a darkness inside you, one you deny, one you bury, one you pray no one ever sees, yet it follows you everywhere, breathing behind your laughter, watching through your silence, whispering in your failures. You call it weakness, shame, anger, fear, yet in truth it is your shadow. And let me tell you, ignoring it does not free you, it enslaves you. You wear masks to appear strong, disciplined, good. But when the night comes, when the world falls silent, you feel its grip. That silent rage, that hidden envy, that hunger for recognition, that thirst for revenge. You tell yourself you are better than these feelings, that by rejecting them you are noble, but in truth you are weaker than you know. For what you refuse to face owns you. What you refuse to face owns you. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your rawest strength, your unpolished power, your fire waiting to be claimed. If you do not embrace it, it will devour you from within. If you do not master it, it will master you. And when that happens, you will wonder why life feels hollow, why success escapes you, why peace never stays. The shadow is not a disease to be cured, nor a poison to be purged, but a reservoir of power that most men are too frightened to touch. When you feel rage boiling in your veins, envy clawing at your heart, or desire igniting in your chest, you call these things shameful, you push them away, pretend they do not exist, and in doing so you weaken yourself. Because what you exile from your soul does not disappear. It waits until you are too tired, too careless, too weak, and then it consumes you. The strongest individuals are not those who deny their darkness, but those who turn it into a weapon. The man who accepts his envy learns ambition. The one who confronts his rage discovers fire. The one who embraces his fear transforms it into caution and strategy. To reject these emotions is to amputate parts of your own spirit. To claim them is to grow whole. The shadow becomes poison only to the coward who dares not look at it. To the one who has the courage to embrace it, it becomes fuel, sharper than steel and hotter than flame. You see, history was never changed by saints who floated above temptation. It was shaped by men who took their shadow and forged it into destiny. The hunger for power, the desire for recognition, the impulse to dominate, these are not flaws, they are the very forces that have built empires, written philosophies, and birthed revolutions. When you deny these instincts, you do not become good. You become harmless, and the world devours the harmless without pity. But when you learn to channel them, you rise above the masses who drown in their denial. The man who says, "I feel no anger," is lying, and the man who says, "I will use my anger to strike when the moment is right," is the one who wins. The shadow, when ignored, chains you. The shadow, when harnessed, frees you. It makes you dangerous, and being dangerous is not evil. It is necessary, for only the dangerous are respected, and only the respected are free. The mistake most make is thinking morality demands rejection of the shadow. But true morality, true strength, is not in suppression. It is in mastery. What is bravery if not the transformation of fear into courage? What is wisdom if not the refinement of doubt into understanding? And what is power if not the reshaping of rage, lust, and ambition into forces that can move mountains? Those who call their shadow evil are often slaves to it in secret. They smile by day, but their unclaimed darkness leaks out at night in cowardly ways. Betrayal, lies, addictions, and failures. But the one who takes his shadow by the throat and says, "You are mine," rises above this weakness. He no longer stumbles blindly. He commands, he directs, he channels, he takes the same poison that destroys others and distills it into strength. What ruins ordinary men becomes the foundation of greatness. You will know you are beginning to harness your shadow when the very things you once despised in yourself begin to serve you. Your anger sharpens your will, your envy drives you to surpass. Your lust for recognition forces you to rise higher than comfort allows. These are no longer curses, but weapons forged in fire. And while the crowd trembles at their own impulses, you stand with control. This is why those who master their shadow seem untouchable, almost superhuman. They are not pure, they are whole. They do not reject their darkness, but wield it with precision. They are feared, not because they are cruel, but because they are complete, and completeness terrifies those who live fractured lives. For when others suppress, they leak weakness. When you embrace, you radiate strength. This is the difference between living as prey and living as predator. Do not mistake this for indulgence. To be ruled by your shadow is slavery, but to ignore it is suicide. The path is to take it as an ally, to transform the raw power within it into something greater. This requires discipline sharper than any rule, for you are not fighting to erase who you are fighting to become more than what you are. Your rage must be directed, your ambition must be tempered, your fear must be trained into vigilance. Then, the shadow ceases to be a storm that tears you apart and becomes the wind that propels you forward. It is this mastery that separates the weak from the strong, the lost from the destined, the forgotten from the remembered. To embrace your shadow is not to sink into darkness. It is to steal its fire and walk through the world blazing. To confront the shadow is to stare into the mirror you have avoided your whole life. It is not a comfortable act. It is the tearing away of masks, the dismantling of lies, the shattering of illusions you have crafted to feel safe. Most people live as fugitives, running endlessly from the parts of themselves they refuse to admit exist. They drown their inner voice in noise, in distractions, in pleasures that numb. But confrontation requires silence, and silence is brutal, because in silence the truth speaks. You see the envy you denied. You see the fear that has dictated your every choice. You see the rage that has rotted in your chest. And for the first time you realize you have been ruled by forces you pretended were not there. The confrontation is not an act of violence, it is an act of unveiling. And in that unveiling lies the first step toward freedom. For what is unseen enslaves you, but what is seen can be mastered. When you confront your shadow, it does not bow willingly, it resists. It whispers temptations. It reminds you of your failures and forces you to relive your pain. It will tell you that you are weak, unworthy, and destined to fall. This is why most men run. They cannot endure the voice of their own darkness, so they bury it deeper and call themselves virtuous for doing so. But those who endure this confrontation are changed. They emerge not as fragile men, but as tempered steel. Every insult from the shadow becomes a weight lifted in training. Every memory of failure becomes a lesson sharpened into strategy. Confrontation burns, but it purifies. It strips away weakness and leaves behind the raw essence of who you are. In this trial, you learn that your shadow is not the enemy. It is the test. Only those who pass it become capable of commanding themselves, and only those who command themselves can command the world. It is in confrontation that you learn discipline, because once you face the shadow, you cannot return to ignorance. You either master it, or it masters you. The man who faces his fear learns to use it as a compass. It points him toward what he must conquer. The man who faces his anger learns to hold it like a sword, drawn only when it cuts with precision. The man who faces his ambition learns patience. Ambition becomes not reckless hunger, but calculated strategy. These qualities are not learned from books, nor from sermons, but only from the brutal dialogue with the self that cannot be escaped. Without confrontation, you are a prisoner, shackled by forces you do not see. With confrontation, you become the warden of your own soul, setting terms, defining limits, and bending the shadow to your will. This is why men who avoid their darkness remain mediocre, while those who embrace it ascend beyond recognition. But let no one deceive you. This confrontation is not once in a lifetime, it is daily. The shadow does not disappear, it waits, it shifts, it evolves. The fears you defeated yesterday may return in new disguises tomorrow. The envy you mastered today may emerge as pride tomorrow. To live is to confront endlessly, but herein lies the secret. Each confrontation makes you stronger, sharper, more sovereign. You stop being afraid of your darkness because you have fought it and survived. You stop being ashamed of your flaws because you have faced them and endured. And this endurance builds an unshakable confidence, the kind that makes others follow, not because you are perfect, but because you are proven. When you have fought your own battles within, no enemy outside can truly terrify you. Transformation through confrontation is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming whole. Every confrontation welds a piece of your broken self back into unity. You are no longer fragmented, no longer hiding, no longer two-faced. You become one. Shadow and light, instinct and reason, rage and restraint, fused into a single being. And this unity radiates. It gives you presence, strength, authority that cannot be faked. People can sense it. The air around you changes because you are no longer pretending. You are real, and reality is magnetic. The shadow, once ignored, destroys life. Once confronted, it forges greatness. And while most shrink from this battle, the few who embrace it become legends, remembered not for their purity, but for their wholeness. To master the self is to seize the throne of your own being. Most men wander through life as slaves, not to kings or tyrants, but to the impulses and fears within them. They are commanded by their envy, ruled by their appetites, shackled by their doubts. They act not from strength, but from reaction. They wait to be provoked, pushed, tempted, and only then do they move, like puppets dancing on invisible strings. But the one who masters himself cuts these strings and binds them to his own hands. He is no longer dragged by desire, but rides it as a rider does a horse. He is no longer weakened by fear, but sharpens it into vigilance. He is no longer consumed by anger, but wields it as a weapon. To master the self is not to kill the shadow, but to crown it, to place it under command, and to march with it as an army under your banner. The man who cannot master himself cannot master anything. He may hold wealth, but he will waste it. He may hold power, but he will abuse it. He may hold love, but he will destroy it. Everything external will slip through the fingers of one who is fractured within. But the man who is whole, the man who has forced his own chaos into order, can extend that mastery outward. He can lead men because he has first led himself. He can build empires because he has first built discipline within his own soul. He can endure betrayal, storms, and ruin because he has already conquered the rebellion inside. This is why the strongest rulers, the greatest leaders, the most unshakable men are not those who seek to dominate the world first. They are those who have bent themselves into unbreakable steel. The world follows those who command themselves because men are drawn to power that cannot be shaken. Self-mastery is not about suppression. It is not about killing your instincts or burying your desires. That is the path of the weak, and the weak always break. True mastery is to take those wild forces within you and turn them into disciplined soldiers. Your hunger becomes ambition. Your anger becomes drive. Your fear becomes strategy. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is hidden. Everything is transformed. This is why those who master themselves are feared and admired. They are complete. You cannot blackmail them with shame because they have faced it. You cannot control them with fear because they have used it. You cannot seduce them with power because they already wield their own. They stand sovereign, and sovereignty is the rarest quality in existence. Few men ever own themselves, and because of that, the one who does becomes untouchable. When you achieve mastery of the self, life ceases to feel chaotic. The same storms that drown others become winds you harness for speed. The same betrayals that crush others become lessons you turn into strength. You stop being dragged by circumstances because you have disciplined yourself to remain unmoved. This is not apathy, it is power. It is the ability to feel fully but act deliberately, to rage and yet remain calm, to fear and yet step forward, to desire and yet not be consumed. This balance is what makes mastery unshakable. The man who achieves it does not live at the mercy of the world. He dictates. He does not merely survive life. He bends life toward his will. And in this, you discover the ultimate truth. Mastery over the self is mastery over life. The external world is nothing but a mirror of the internal one. Chaos outside only overwhelms those who are chaotic within. But the one who is ordered, disciplined, whole, he bends chaos into opportunity. Fortune itself seems to favor him, not because the gods are kinder, but because he has shaped himself into one worthy of power. And when you become this, the world can no longer destroy you. You may lose wealth, but you will rebuild it. You may lose allies, but you will gain stronger ones. You may lose battles, but you will return sharper and win the war. For the one who has mastered himself has already conquered the only enemy that truly mattered. You have seen that the shadow you fear is not your enemy, but your rawest strength waiting to be claimed. You have understood that to ignore it is to live fractured, to pretend at virtue while being ruled by hidden chains. Power begins not by running from darkness, but by bending it to your command. To confront yourself, to strip away the illusions and meet the truths you've buried, is a trial that few dare face. Yet in that trial lies the fire that purifies weakness into strength, pain into wisdom, and rage into purpose. Every confrontation with yourself is a battle, but it is also a victory that cannot be taken away. For the man who has mastered his own chaos can never again be broken by the chaos of the world. And in this mastery you find the highest form of freedom. You cease to be a slave to impulses, to fears, to circumstances, and instead you become sovereign over your life. This sovereignty is the mark of the rarest men, the ones who bend fate itself because they have first conquered themselves. Remember, your shadow is not the weight that drags you down. It is the fire that, if harnessed, will carry you beyond the reach of ordinary men. Thank you for listening. May strength guide you, and may you walk with courage. God bless you.